Hey guys, so today I want to talk about the new Keystone passive called the Blackflame Covenant. This has been a fairly popular node because it just looks pretty dang cool in the game, and I think a lot of people are interested in this fire to chaos conversion, and I wanted to go over everything about this node today, from what it does, to how to scale it, to the pros and cons of it, and what ascendancies that I think will be good with using this node. So let's dive right on in. So the Black Flame Covenant is a node on the tree that's going to be in the sorceress slash witch area, and it is going to make it so that your fire spells are converted to chaos damage. So fire spells convert 100% of their fire damage specifically to chaos damage. Now, in addition to this, chaos damage from fire spells contributes to ignite, magnitude, and chance, and the ignite inflicted with fire spells deals chaos damage instead of fire damage. Now, while this seems really cool and unique, this is actually something that pretty much existed in the game already. So converting fire spells to chaos damage pretty much existed already with the original Sin Amethyst ring. This made it so 100% of elemental damage converted to chaos is converted to chaos damage. So not just fire, but any element is converted. So that's basically the same thing. And the thing that is different between the original Sin and the node, though, is that with the node, it also makes it so that your ignites deal chaos damage instead of fire damage. But that also existed in the game already, which is the Black Flame ring. So enemies ignited by you will take chaos damage instead of fire damage from ignite. So basically what it does is it takes these two uniques and kind of puts them in one node. Now, in the past, you couldn't use both these uniques together because once you use Original Sin, that means you weren't igniting anymore. But now with this node, you're going to be able to deal chaos damage with your fire spells and also still ignite with that chaos damage. So that is pretty dang cool. And to be honest, that's pretty much it for this node. It's a pretty simple to understand node and very, very straightforward. But when it comes to scaling this damage, it does change a little bit compared to when you're just using fire damage to ignite. So because all of your fire damage from your spells is converted to chaos damage, that also means that you're going to be changing how you scale your damage. Instead of scaling your damage with increases to fire damage, you're going to be using increases to chaos damage. Now, I know a lot of people are instantly thinking about, well, if I scale fire damage on my tree, doesn't mean that fire damage is going to get increased, then turned into chaos damage, and then I can scale with chaos damage as well and double dip. Unfortunately, that is not the case. You cannot scale fire damage and chaos damage at the same time. The time where the scaling comes from is after the conversion and not before. And I could demonstrate this with Path of Building. So in front of me is a Path of Building opened up with a witch just like level 13, and it is currently using Fireball. So 180 average hit damage. All it's using right now is a life sprig. So no added elemental damage, no nothing. It's just a basic wand, right? So in this situation, if I increase the fire damage on the tree, you will see that the number steadily goes up, right? But if I increase the chaos damage, obviously it doesn't go up because all it does is fire damage. But we're going to go and equip the Original Sin, which then converts all of my elemental damage into chaos damage, which is basically what that node does, right? So now, instead, when I increase the fire damage, it doesn't go up anymore. But on the flip side, if I increase the chaos damage, that will then start scaling the amount of damage that we do. So as you can see, even though you have a situation where it was fire damage and it gets converted to chaos damage, you unfortunately can't double dip. You're only going to be able to increase your damage with chaos damage. And in addition to that, what that also means is that instead of using something like flammability, or in 0.3, it's going to be elemental weakness, you're going to be using things like despair as your main curse. And then also, instead of using elemental penetration, you're going to be using wither to scale your damage, because all of your damage is going to be coming in the form of chaos damage. But one thing to consider is that even though everything is going to be converted to chaos and normally fire stuff doesn't work, the one fire level, point of scaling that does work is going to be ignite magnitude. Because right now it says that everything you do in chaos damage contributes ignite and chance and magnitude, and the ignite is going to be dealing chaos damage instead of fire. But at the end of the day, it still is ignite. So on the tree or whatever item that you have, that says increases to ignite magnitude will still increase the amount of magnitude on your ignite damage. So that is one kind of main differentiator to kind of talk about when we're talking about scaling damage. But the other thing that I want to let you know is that extra damage does not get converted. So it's really interesting, right? Because on the skill itself, it does say that all fire damage from spells will get converted. But when you get something like Sacred Flame, for example, that says extra damage is converted into, or you do extra damage as fire, that will not get converted. So I'm going to go and put a Sacred Flame onto this character, right? And as you can see, right now on my calculator for the damage that I'm doing for Fireball, you will see that I'm going to be doing some fire and some chaos, even though I'm wearing the original Sin. If I took off this one, right, you can see that in the calculations, there's no more fire anymore. So in the case that you are wearing something like a Sacred Flame, which grants extra damage as fire, that will not get converted, and you will still be able to do all your regular fire stuff. And as you can see right now, when I scale fire damage, that will end up scaling the damage. And while I'm not completely sure about this situation, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work this way, even though you have extra damage as fire from your Sacred Flame or whatever item you're using, as long as you're inflicting ignite damage, right, it will still be chaos damage going out to the enemy. Because you see right here, it doesn't say fire ignite, it just says ignite inflicted with fire spells. So as long as you're using a fire spell, even if it has extra fire damage on top of that, that is not converted into chaos, it should still deal that ignite as chaos damage onto the enemies. So you can still stack ignite that way, but it won't contribute to the overall chaos damage, and it won't get scaled by chaos damage either. So that in a nutshell is how this node works, how you're going to be able to use it, how you're going to be able to scale it, and what works and what doesn't. So at the end of the day though, this begs the question, is this a node that is worth taking? Do I think that this node is good? And unfortunately at this point, as you can see here, I'm saying that I just don't see too many merits of going this node. Yes, while this node is really, really cool, unfortunately, I still think chaos damage as a damage type is a little bit underbaked at this point. So let's just list out the pros and cons, and this will hopefully help you understand why I don't think that there's many merits for using this node. So let's take a look at pros, right? So I have one pro listed right here, which is that monsters typically have 0% chaos resistance, which is really, really good because lowering resistance is a multiplier. So normally monsters will have 35, 25, whatever it is, and pinnacle bosses have 75 resistance to elements. So in that case, you have a 75% damage multiplier by taking their chaos damage or chaos resistance from 75 down to 0. But the thing is, even though that is the case, there are lots of opportunities for you to take chaos resistance down to 0. For example, you can do it with Beacon of Z's and the Invoker Ascendancy, which makes it so that every time you crit, you take a monster's elemental resistance down to 0%. Now, that is pretty easy with most builds because most builds only scale crit chance and crit damage in Path of Exile right now. So you can definitely do that. And on top of that, that also means that you can't use Rakiata's Flow, which is a new Legion support gem, which looks absolutely insane. So if you take a look at this, right, Rakiata's Flow makes it so that hits with supported skills treat enemy monster elemental resistance as inverted. So if you're up against a pinnacle boss that has 75% elemental resistance to fire, then that gets inverted to negative 75% elemental resistance, which is absolutely insane. But if you have 0% chaos resistance on the enemy, that also means that it's getting inverted to 0, so nothing will change. So even though you have 0 chaos resistance, there's just a lot of ways to get elemental resistance down to 0 as well, and you're missing out on Rakiata's Flow. But having said that, though, if you have 0 chaos resistance and you throw a despair on the top of the enemies, then that'll take their elemental resistance down to negatives. Whereas if you're using, let's say, Beacon of Aziz or the Invoker Ascendancy, you actually won't be getting any bonuses off of elemental weakness or flammability or whatever, because they just set the elemental resistance at 0, and it doesn't let you go below that easily. So that is kind of the, I guess, pro for this, but it really isn't that big of a pro at the end of the day when you think about it. The other thing is that if you want to use an Ignite build, let's say you're using Incinerate or using some sort of build that takes advantage of just heavy Ignite damage and you can't crit, that means that you can't use these, right? So you're like, okay, well, this makes this a lot better. But that's not quite the case either, because for Ignite builds, for the most part, you lack magnitude scaling, Ignite magnitude scaling. So you'll likely still be using the Blackflame ring, which is this ring right here. And that already takes your chaos, ignites into chaos damage. So you don't actually need the node. And again, it gives 50% increased magnitude of Ignite, which is huge. In 0.2, you pretty much didn't see a single build that used Ignite that didn't use the Blackflame ring, just because it gave you so much Ignite magnitude. So at the end of the day, if you're using an Ignite build like Incinerate, you're probably already converting your damage into chaos anyways. So the node at the end of the day is just not really doing too much. But, you know, I know I've talked a lot about the cons, but that's kind of like in the pros section. So in this case, I really don't really see much of a pro in going this node. In fact, there's a lot more cons than pros, which is pretty much at 0. So let's go over the cons, right? So on this tree, you have much less opportunities to scale chaos damage compared to fire damage. So right now, I'm going to use POB and search up chaos damage, right? So there's quite a few nodes around here for chaos damage. It seems, at least on the surface. You have these nodes right here. This cluster is which is pretty strong, right? Getting spaghettification, getting 29% increased chaos damage. You have these nodes right here. You have this cluster right here. So it looks like there's a couple of clusters that you can go to scale your chaos damage. And when we put fire, wait a second, it looks like there's kind of less nodes on here that scale fire damage. But that's not quite the case, because fire damage can also be scaled by using elemental damage nodes as well. So when you combine both the elemental damage nodes and the fire damage nodes, it ends up being that there's a lot more opportunities for you to scale fire damage than just chaos damage on the tree. And that also goes for equipment as well. Like, I mean, even just with the Sacred Flame, that's a ton of fire damage that you're getting on top of it. So unfortunately, when you're talking about scaling chaos damage, there doesn't seem to be that many opportunities to do it right now. But the other thing is, when you're scaling fire, you're likely going to want to scale Ignite magnitude as well. And if you think about it, all the Ignite magnitude nodes are around the fire node areas. So regardless of whether you're going the fire Ignite or chaos Ignite, you're likely still going to want to pick up some of these Ignite magnitude nodes. Like here, right? You're going to waste 12% fire, 12% fire to get to what I would say is the best Ignite node in the game, Burnout. Ignites you, inflict, deal damage faster. So there's just lots of places where on the tree, if you're going to be scaling Ignite, you're also going to be scaling fire as well. So what's the point of getting chaos ignites and chaos fire damage if you're just going to be scaling regular fire damage at the end of the day anyways? So that's number 2. The third one, kind of a smaller one, is that it just requires you to take the node. I mean, it's not really that big, it's just 1 point, but potentially it means that you might not be, it might make you go like a weirder route. And one node is one node at the end of the day. At the end of the game, one level is a lot. So, you know, it's just all of these cons to me just don't really stack up against the pros. So, yeah, I just don't really think that this is likely a very good node to take at the end of the day. It just isn't strong enough at the moment in terms of the chaos damage archetype. But having said that, if you are still interested in going this node because it's totally cool, by all means, do it. I think I'm probably going to do a build at some point in this league for this because I just like cool, fun things, right? So if that's the case, I want to go over what I think are good ascendancies for using this node. So first off is going to be Blood Mage. So Blood Mage makes it so that your crit chance and crit damage gets scaled quite a bit because of the ascendancy. And in this patch, it really seems like they're doing a lot to scale down what you can get for in terms of crit chance and crit damage from your items and trees and everything. So it looks like it's going to get nerfed across the board. And as a result, having an Ascendancy with built-in forms of crit chance and crit damage is going to be really good for doing big damage. Now, Infernalist also kind of has that positive where it has a good crit damage scaling as well. And you can see right here, it gets this grinning immolation that gives you 50% more crit damage bonus, right? And on top of that, Demon Form looks to be absolutely insane this upcoming league. So if you're using a spell damage build, which you're going to be using because this is only for fire spells, then Demon Form is probably going to be a very, very good choice. Insane damage scaling, and I can expect them to be one of the highest damage dealers this league. Now, Acolyte of Chayula is also an interesting choice. While I would say it is not as straightforward as Blood Mage and Infernalist, which are basically just like damage ups, Acolyte of Chayula allows you to have really strong burst with volatility, because volatility will allow you to have 200% extra chaos damage for 10 seconds at the beginning of the fight if you set it up correctly. So it means that you're going to be doing a ton of damage in a small window, which will allow you to do like fast bosses, fast boss one shots and stuff like that, which is very, very valuable. So that is something that you can do. And on top of that, when I talked about extra damage earlier, right, I was talking about extra fire damage and extra elemental damage. But if you see here, it says chaos damage from fire spells. So all chaos damage, even extra chaos damage, contributes to ignite magnitude and might chance, right? So what that'll mean is all of that extra chaos damage that you're doing is just going to go into getting one ginormous magnitude of ignite, which is going to burn down bosses really, really fast. And on top of that, Acolyte of Chayula just has a lot of good extra chaos damage buffs. Like when you take Into the Breach, for example, this will spawn a chaos little remnant you can pick up, get 7% extra chaos damage, stacking up to 70%. So overall, this is just going to be a very good chaos damage ascendancy as well. But if you ask me which ones I would prefer, I think I would probably pick Blood Mage and Infernalist over this one. It's probably just going to be a lot more universal and a lot better overall. But this one is going to be spiking in terms of its one-shot capabilities. So yeah, those are the Ascendancies that I think are really good. Of course, as always, Ritualist can be used for anything. Same with Gemling. So if you want to be Gemling, Path all the way up here. Or if you want to be Ritualist and Path all the way up here, you can definitely do that. And they're going to be very, very solid. Gemling and Ritualist are just kind of like universal classes that can make anything work. So you can feel free to do that. And also, I guess, Titan as well. But you kind of have to work around these armor nodes, which is kind of a little bit iffy. But yeah, hopefully this video helped you guys out in understanding what this new node Blackflame's Covenant does and help you decide whether or not you want to use it. Again, in my opinion, probably not too much merit outside of the cool factor, but hey, cool factor counts for a lot, right? As long as you're having fun, that's all that matters. But that's about it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know down in the comment section below if you're going to be using Blackflame's Covenant on your starter build. And also, if you enjoyed the video, the best way to support the channel is by hitting the sub button, because it both supports the channel completely free and also lets me know that you enjoyed the content, and I'll make more like this. And I also stream on twitch.tv/MeSoXure every single night. So hopefully I get to see you guys there. But if not, hopefully I'll see y'all on the next video. All right, guys. Peace.